Hi, it's Matt, and today I want to talk with you about one of the most common questions I get about online business, which is people ask me, Matt, should I quit my job, or do I need to quit my job to really make a go of this and go down this, what is effectively an entrepreneurial pathway? And usually when someone asks me this question, my answer is probably not. It's fairly blunt, but the reason is that if you don't have that degree of certainty and clarity about exactly where you're going with your online business, then you're probably not ready to go full-time with it. Because there's a degree of practicality around this for most people. I mean, I'll certainly add a caveat to this video that I don't know your circumstances, your responsibilities, and exactly, financial, for example, but usually my response is about, get clarity first on what you're going to be doing, which you can do whilst you're still in your job. However, when you are ready to make that leap or deciding when that time is to make that leap, that's what I want to talk to you about today. And I'll share a bit about my story to put this in context of how I did it, basically. And for me, it wasn't about leaving the wrong job. My last job was working as a police officer, and I loved it. I was part of a great team. It was challenging work, very tough. It was very rewarding work because it was I felt a very tangible way to give back to the community. So I loved my job, and then I quit, right? So I even remember the moment, basically, when I decided that, this was going to be it for this job. And it was around about midnight on a night shift. And I just finished putting the cuffs on this guy and placing him into the police van. And, it was a very complicated situation. It was one of these classic jobs that was almost like out of a movie, people to arrest, people first aid, lots of stuff going on, just going crazy. And I suddenly thought about my family at home. And at the time, my wife was pregnant with our first child, and I was thinking about, when we have kids, which is, happening right now, at this time of night, I'm probably, more useful to my family actually being there than off serving the community in this great way. And, and if you've had kids, then I was pretty much on the money there because, with the little ones, a lot of the important time at, helping out your family is actually after midnight. So all these night shifts when I was out doing all this great stuff with the police and, also having a great time, was suddenly like I had a new priority. And you've probably heard me talk about priorities before. I really think we have a priority. What is your priority? And for me, I was voluntarily shifting towards raising a family and parenthood. So that decision to quit my job came pretty easily. And I needed to do something else. And that to me was business. And that's how I ended up going down that path of business. So really, you need a reason greater than what you're leaving to why you're doing the business. So for me, it wasn't even the business. It was my family, which was why I was leaving. So the second part of this story is the practical level, where my wife and I had saved some money to give us, I suppose, what ended up being a runway to start an entrepreneurial venture without having too much financial risk about it and needing to be, in this state of desperation about having to make money immediately. Because we'd made some decisions about, what house we would invest in and, not what we could afford, but, making some lower decisions about what we really needed, which meant that, we didn't know at the time what we were going to do with that savings, but it turned into a runway to start a business to be more secure that I could go and do these ventures and start two businesses at once in the end and have them very slowly start whilst being unemployed. And that ended up working out for us. But really it came back to that reason. I had an amazing amount of leverage over myself as to why I was going to make that business work that again gave me that confidence to leave my job. So these practical levels, there's also 3 steps that I like to talk about, talking back on you now as to what you might do in progressing to that point where it is time to quit your job. And the first one is that I would rather see you quit something else first. Most of us have a degree of responsibility that we need the job for the income initially, at least. So what else can you quit before your job? I think nowadays there's a lot of, there's a greater tendency or an overestimation, if you like, on how much recreation and social time we need, if you like. I'm not saying you shouldn't do those things and have a social life and recreation things and all these great things. But, if you have a look at your calendar and have a look, well, how much am I working? How much am I doing recreation times and social times? You may be able to cut things back here, and suddenly you've got a lot of time to actually start hustling in this entrepreneurial gig, starting your online business. Which leads me to point number 2, which is the side hustle. When you are starting a business and you've got this new idea, or it might be your 5th greatest idea, then take advantage of this. I call it the business honeymoon period, where you're so excited about the business, obstacles come up left, right, and center, but it doesn't matter. You just overcome and you just progress forward, right? take advantage of that. You know, you have this level of excitement and energy right at the beginning that you can get stuff done even just with, you know, an hour a day even, or less, half an hour a day sometimes, just, you know, working on the site. And that's certainly how I started, because even though I quit my job, I had 2 businesses starting, but we also had some complications with our daughter in terms of health issues that meant that I was very involved in the parenting, much more than I anticipated for those first few months. So yeah, it was hard, but I had that honeymoon period of business, if you like, where I just made stuff happen. And the third one is that if you have, sort of links these two together, if you have cut back a little bit with step 1 in your social activities and your recreational, you may have now freed up a little bit of funding, which goes towards this step 3, which is building your own runway. So as I said, we had earned the right to risk an entrepreneurial venture, if you like, because we had some capital behind us. There's a common statistic about there that the most common reason for business failure is people run out of capital, i.e. they run out of money and start making poor decisions for the business out of desperation, or simply just can't afford to run the business anymore because they can't get past that startup phase because there is no cash. So start building that runway is step 3. So ultimately we're looking at find the extra time so that you can build your side hustle a little more each week. Start building your savings so you can build that runway for yourself. Generally, I recommend 6-12 months that you could survive without any money coming in the door from your business. But again, it depends on your circumstances. You might not need that, you might need more. And ultimately build to a position where you're not quitting your job because you hate your job. You're quitting your job because you've got this certainty and clarity of your business, which is now growing. You know you can see a trajectory there, an actual estimation of what's going on. And basically, you may not even have time for your job anymore. And that's why you're moving on. So there's my ideas for you today on that very common question on should you or do you have to quit your job to start an online business? And my answer typically is no, you don't.